And Jiva Goswami by His Grace Radhika Ramana Prabhu. We have some index cards and pencils to pass out for anybody who would like them. So if you'd like some index cards and pencils, Avantika will be passing them out. Please raise your hand and she'll give them to you. Also, we'd like to alert the internet audience that this seminar is restarting. So any of you who are online, who are also on Facebook, we would really appreciate it if you would send out a message on your Facebook right now telling people that the seminar is restarting and inviting new people to come online. Anybody that's in the class right now that has a mobile device, if you know somebody that you can contact who might be at home, please just send them a text and tell them to get on Facebook and let them know that the seminar is restarting right now at 11:45, and it'll be going all the way until 1 o'clock, I believe. Is that correct? 1:30? All the way till 1:45? 1:45. Okay. How is everyone so far? On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 means you're in ecstasy, 1 means you're ready to go home. How are you feeling? 12. Okay, we're on the 12 level. We welcome back everybody who's joined us on the internet and here in our live studio audience. Thank you very much for joining. And could somebody please bring the headset back for Radhika Ramana, please? So we're starting part 2 now, and let's give a warm welcome to His Grace Radhika Ramana Prabhu. Hare Krishna. A little more though, come on.
It's worried that everyone would be asleep after lunch, but this is far from asleep. Everyone's excited. Let's today's actually Jiva Goswami's appearance day, as you may know, and there's one room conversation in which Srila Prabhupada is going through all the festivals in the Vaishnava calendar and giving short instructions on how to celebrate each of those festivals and when they happen and so on. And when he comes to Jiva Goswami's appearance day, he specifically says that on a day like this we should discuss the works of Jiva Goswami, particularly the Shat Sandarbha. So this is this is hopefully satisfying to His Divine Grace, and we'll get started with that very task. So the word Sandarbha Sandarbha means literally weaving, to weave, like taking 2 pieces of cloth and weaving them together. And the book that we're going to talk about is called the Shat Sandarbha. The official name of the Shat Sandarbha is Bhagavata Sandarbha. Shat Sandarbha is actually a nickname. It means the 6 Sandarbhas. But the name for the 6 Sandarbhas that Jiva Goswami gave is Bhagavata Sandarbha, which then literally means a weaving of Srimad Bhagavatam. So weaving is the literal sense. A treatise or treatise is the common sense of the word Sandarbha. And basically what Jiva Goswami is doing then, based on the name of Bhagavata Sandarbha, is he's offering a thematic study of Srimad Bhagavatam. So he's taking the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam and weaving them together in a way to provide a systematic and comprehensive exposition of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy. So, systematic and comprehensive, these two things are very important. Every sampradaya, Vaishnava sampradaya, up to that point, had a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, which served to provide a systematic and comprehensive introduction to the tradition for members of that sampradaya, but also for outsiders. Jiva Goswami's Bhagavata Sandarbha is, in our tradition, the very first systematic and comprehensive exposition on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy. That means it's systematic, means he's going to go through it step by step and make the argument for Mahaprabhu's philosophy. It's not just a collection of different ideas from Mahaprabhu. And comprehensive means he's going to cover everything, or at least indicate everything that can be covered, even if it's been covered before. So this is why there are significant overlaps between the Sandarbhas and other works of the six Goswamis, because the Bhagavata Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami is really trying to cover the field. And he's trying to do so by writing for an outside audience, for an outward audience. Much more so than the other Goswamis were doing, like Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami. So I'll make that clearer in just a minute, but let's first go through with the Bhagavata Sandarbha. There's 6 of them that are named as follows. There's Tattva Sandarbha, which is the shortest of the Sandarbhas, and in some ways the most important because it lays down the methods, the groundwork for what he's going to do. Actually, Jiva Goswami has a very nice passage in Tattva Sandarbha where he lays out the methodology that he's going to follow in his argument, in his study of Mahaprabhu's philosophy. And that discussion of method is in fact unusually, modern in how he does it, where it's very actually pleasing for an academic to see how clearly Jiva Goswami lists what he wants to do, what his primary sources are going to be for substantiation, how he's going to use each one of those sources, and he even addresses potential difficulties in some of his sources. So Jiva Goswami starts off by saying, number one, the object of our study is Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay? Now this is significant because you will find that all of our acharyas, their number one goal is to illuminate Srimad Bhagavatam. For Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Bhagavatam is it. That is the repository of everything. And it's the source of knowledge, it's the source of rasa, it's the source of everything. And so the Bhagavata Sandarbha is nothing more than an exposition on the Bhagavatam. That's it. And that's what Jiva Goswami makes it very clear. This is what I'm doing here. The subject matter is the Srimad Bhagavatam. The verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam are going to function like sutras. They are going to be the subject of our study. And then the discussion of that that I'm going to do is going to serve as the commentary on these particular sutras. Actually, technically speaking, he says the Bhagavatam is the Vishaya Vakyas, which is the subject matter that's going to be studied here in our description. So he goes through that, and then he says we're going to use other works as well, by Ramanujacharya and Madhvacharya and Sridhara Swami. These 3 in particular are his sources. And with each one he describes exactly what text he's going to be using and what the reasons for the use are. He says, first of all, that none of these books are going to be used to substantiate the words of the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavata needs no substantiation. That is Shabda. That is the absolute truth, it's revelation. It doesn't need corroboration, number one. But these works will be used to substantiate my ideas on these on these verses of the Bhagavatam. In other words, my explanation or commentary on the Bhagavatam, so that you see it's consistent with the other acharyas, I will quote these verses to support those. But he says sometimes the plain and evident meaning of the Bhagavatam will be sufficient. Okay, he talks about, he highly praises Ramanujacharya in this work. In fact, at the beginning of every Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami says something very interesting. He says, the Sandarbhas originally were written by one Dakshinatyena Bhattena, by one Bhatta from South India, which we understand to mean Gopal Bhatta Goswami. But over time, Kranta Vyutkranta Khanditam, the pages have all been put in the wrong order, things have been lost, and basically the whole structure has been messed up. And so our goal here, he says, how does it go? Paryalochita paryayam. We are going through over it again, and we're smoothing out all the issues and problems and rephrasing it and presenting it in a clean and tight fashion. So he credits a lot of the content of the Sandarbhas to Gopal Bhatta Goswami. And Gopal Bhatta Goswami, we know, was well trained in Sri Vaishnava tradition. He was the son of Venkat Bhatta, the head priest of the Sri Rangam temple. So therefore, there's a lot of very clear, obvious parallels between Jiva Goswami's writings and that of Ramanujacharya, and he's quoting very often from Sri Bhashya in the Sandarbhas as a source of authoritative ideas. The second person he says is Madhvacharya, who he will use also. And Madhvacharya he's using primarily as a source for quotations from scriptures that Jiva Goswami has no access to anymore. So it's very nice actually how he describes his sources. If any of you have done graduate work, you know how important it is to describe your sources and how you're going to use them, in what way you're relying on them. He says, all the texts I'm quoting, almost all of them, he says, I have seen with my own eyes in books that I have, and I'm quoting them authentically. Some books, however, he says, are not available anymore because they've been lost, or sections of those books have been lost, like from the Garuda Purana. Certain sections are unavailable to us, but they are substantiated in the writings of Madhvacharya. This is why we're going to use Madhvacharya as the source for those writings. Okay? So he's very clear on how he's using the works of Madhvacharya. He praises both. But what's interesting is he says that for Ramanujacharya he's going to use as a source for content and ideas. Madhvacharya he's using as a source for quotations, primarily. But the most important source, even more than the two of them, is Sridhara Swami. And Sridhara Swami, he says, we're going to use his commentary on Bhagavatam on a regular basis. In fact, in the Sandarbhas, you'll find Jiva Goswami quoting a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, immediately offering Sridhar Swami's commentary verbatim, then offering his own comments on it. And this is particularly following the instruction of Mahaprabhu, which was that Sridhar Swami's commentary is the definitive commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam. So there's a lot more to say about Sridhar Swami. I see several hands up in the air, but let's wait on that, because just later on in the seminar, either later today or tomorrow, we'll come to a point where it'll become necessary to talk a bit more about Sridhar Swami himself and the potential challenges associated with using his commentary, which Jiva Goswami indicates and acknowledges, but which have been sources of controversy later on in the tradition also. So please wait on that for a little while. So the Bhagavata Sandarbha, 6 parts. Tattva Sandarbha, Bhagavat, Paramatma Sandarbha, Krishna Sandarbha, Bhakti Sandarbha, and Preeti Sandarbha. The 6 total. The first 4 that means Tattva, Bhagavat, Paramatma, and Krishna Sandarbha present Sambandha Gyan. That is, they discuss the nature of who God is, who we are, what is the material energy, and what is the relationship between all of these things. Bhagavat Sandarbha discusses the nature of Bhagavan, or God himself. Paramatma Sandarbha talks about the relationship of that God to creation, to the material world. And that relationship is encapsulated with the idea of Paramatma, or Antaryami, which is the form of the Lord meant specifically for creation, for the material world. So he's discussing things like time and cause and creation and energy and all of these things, Shakti. Then Krishna Sandarbha focuses particularly on highlighting Krishna and who he is, not in an abstract sense, but specifically. Krishna Sandarbha parallels a lot with Laghu Bhagavatamrita of Rupa Goswami. There's a lot of overlapping content there if you read the two books side by side. And then Bhakti Sandarbha talks about Abhidheya, or the process of reestablishing the relationship between ourselves and Krishna. And it's the largest of the 6 Sandarbhas, very substantial, and goes into all the details about the practice of bhakti. And the final Priti Sandarbha, the 6th one, deals with prayojana, or the ultimate goal of our spiritual practice, which is Priti, which is a synonym of prema, so love for Krishna. Just for reference point, and we won't go into this in much more detail, but the Bhakti Sandarbha corresponds to approximately the eastern ocean of the nectar devotion of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And the Priti Sandarbha then covers the other 3 oceans plus sections of the Ujjvala Nilamani, which is the next book after Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that goes very deeply into Shringara Rasa and Madhurya Rasa. So that's the approximate correlation between the works of the Rupa and Sanatan and Jiva Goswami's Shat Sandarbha. Now, what I was saying earlier is that Jiva Goswami, in the Sandarbhas, he's trying to accomplish these 2 things, systematic and comprehensive. Let's cover everything in a systematic manner. But he's doing so with not just the devotee audience in mind, but also an external audience as well. The reason we can tell this is because Jiva Goswami, especially in the first 3 Sandarbhas, Tattva, Bhagavat, and Paramatma Sandarbhas, he's presenting key concepts of our philosophy in a way that does not require adherence to the specific aspects, sectarian aspects of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And by sectarian, I don't mean anything negative here. What I mean is those things which are unique to Chaitanya Vaishnavism. So he will talk, for example, about the nature of Bhagavan. Means what? God is a person, and he has a relationship with other persons, and that personality is not material, he's transcendental. He will talk about that without spending too much time trying to convince his audience yet that that person is Krishna. And it's the 2-handed flute, a boy playing the flute. Okay, in general, the sense is there. It's Vishnu, it's Krishna, it's Vishnu Tattva. That general sense is present, no doubt. But he doesn't actually try hard to convince at this point. He talks about the importance of Leela and how this transcendental pastimes or play is a characteristic of Bhagavan. But he doesn't spend much time talking about rasa, which is definitely a Gaudiya Vaishnav emphasis. He talks about the importance of Antaranga Shakti, the Lord's internal energy, and his external energy, and the difference, the nature of Shakti itself. But he doesn't say anything about Srimati Radharani and how she is very much Antaranga Shakti. So what you find him doing in the first 3 Sandarbhas is presenting the philosophical ideas of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy, getting people to understand the basic concepts without necessarily you could say, turning them away or forcing them to engage with the specific articles of faith that make us Gaudiya Vaishnavas. In the manner that we might go up to someone and say, talk about the difference between the body and the soul, without spending a lot of time discussing the nature of the spiritual world or what the soul is like, or the fact that we believe that the soul has a spiritual form and all of these things. We don't go there. We talk about, look, let's get the basics clear first. We need to agree that we are all eternal spirit soul. He doesn't have to start with that kind of basic ideas, but he's presenting things for an external audience in a way that's philosophically abstracted to some extent. In this way, he's very much serving the function that other acharyas in the past have served through their Vedanta Sutra commentaries, which were also written with an external audience in mind, not just the internal. So that's a little bit of a preamble when it comes to what the Sandarbhas are from an overall perspective. They are the first systematic and comprehensive presentation of Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy. Rupa Goswami wrote Bhakti-Rasamrita Sindhu, the definitive work on rasa, but he didn't cover other things. He also wrote Laghu Bhagavatamrita, a powerful work on Krishna's nature and qualities and pastimes and avatars, but he doesn't cover other things. Jiva Goswami, for the first time, says, here's the whole panoramic view. This is everything, okay? At least in seed form. There's a lot more you can go into in depth, but this is the whole philosophy. This is what makes us Gaudiya Vaishnavas. And if you study this, you will know the similarities and differences between us and other schools. You will know the arguments in favor of and against other perspectives, okay? Now, what is Jiva Goswami trying to accomplish within the Sandarbhas? His goal is quite simple. He wants to show the supremacy of Mahaprabhu's philosophy, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy is the highest teaching. This goal is one that is shared by any acharya who's writing a book like this about their tradition, to defend that school of thought as the highest philosophy, okay? And he wants to defend Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy as the highest. But how to accomplish this goal? Okay, how do we get to that point? For this, Jiva Goswami uses a strategy that can be laid out in the following way. Okay, it's a three-step strategy. The first, here's the argument. The first is to show that the Bhagavatam is the highest source of valid knowledge. In other words, it's the highest pramana. Bhagavatam is the highest source of knowledge. That Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy, the Bhagavatam teaches okay, maybe I'll have to just speak this because we're running out of space here. Mahaprabhu's okay, so Bhagavatam is the highest source of knowledge. Pardon the handwriting here; it's kind of very messy. The Bhagavatam is the highest source of knowledge. The second step is that the Bhagavatam teaches Mahaprabhu's philosophy. Okay, now think about this: the highest pramana or source of knowledge is Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is teaching. The second step of the argument is that the Bhagavatam is teaching Mahaprabhu's philosophy. What's the conclusion of the argument?
Highest knowledge in Mahaprabhu's philosophy.
Yes. Mahaprabhu's philosophy is the highest philosophy. Right? If the Bhagavatam is the highest repository of knowledge, and that repository of knowledge teaches Mahaprabhu's philosophy, then Mahaprabhu's philosophy has to be the highest. Okay, so this is the overall strategy in the first 3 Sandarbhas, where he's really trying to this point about systematic and comprehensive argument for Mahaprabhu's philosophy. If we can accomplish the first 2 steps, the last conclusion of the argument automatically follows. And so this is all we have to do, is show point 1 and show point 2. Now, this is no ordinary task, of course. This is where the heart of it lies. But the strategy itself is quite simple. It's quite straightforward. Now, the first step is that the Bhagavatam is the highest source of knowledge. How does he do this? Well, this is where the Tattva Sandarbha really is so crucial, why it's such a key work amongst the 6 Sandarbhas, even though it is the shortest, and in some senses the simplest in terms of structure. But what makes it so very important is because this entire first premise is dealt with in half of the Tattva Sandarbha. And after that, he doesn't really have to deal with it again. He builds a clear argument for the Bhagavatam supremacy. He starts off by saying, by talking about the pramanas as a whole. There are different sources of knowledge in this world, 3 of which are most commonly accepted as reliable. That's visual perception, or any kind of perception, sensual perception, pratyaksha. There's inference or reasoning, anumana. And then there's revelation from a higher authority, that's shabda. And he shows, first of all, how shabda is the most reliable of the 3. Then he goes on to show how the natural and complete repository of shabda are the Vedas. Then he asks, well, what are the Vedas? And he extends the definition of the Vedas from just the 4 samhitas, Rig, Yajur, Sam, and Atharva, and the Upanishads, to include also the Puranas and the Itihasas, by providing quotations from the Upanishads and from the Puranas. And he also makes an argument for why the Puranas are so much better than even the Vedas are. Not only are they part of the Vedas, but they're actually better than the Vedas. Because, he says, first of all, they're accessible, the Puranas, in a way that the Vedas aren't. Basically, the Vedas in traditional India, especially in Jiva Goswami's time, you cannot study or teach the Vedas unless you are a member of the upper 3 varnas, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya. But especially unless you are a Brahman, you cannot teach the Vedas. And you certainly cannot do what the Vedas are asking you to do, which is Vedic sacrifices, unless you're a Brahman. And that means also you have to be a man, because women are also not studying the Vedas. And so basically, unless you're a Brahman male, you don't really have access to the full Vedic tradition. And that's a very, very tiny slice of the Indian population at any point in its history, what to speak of the world's population. So he says the Vedas are not widely accessible. The meaning of the Vedas is also largely lost, which is a fact. Means the commentaries on the Vedas illuminate what they have to say, but the original texts are extremely obscure and difficult to understand. And commentaries date from many, many centuries after the Vedas were originally written. And the Puranas present the same conclusions as the Vedas, but in a clear form that's attractive and accessible for everyone. And so he says, therefore, the Puranas and Itihasas, far from being dismissed, have to be regarded as essential to understanding the Vedas. In fact, as better than the Vedas. Then he goes on further to say how of all the Puranas, the very best is Srimad Bhagavatam. And this he quotes verses from Bhagavatam itself, but also from the other Puranas, which state that the Bhagavatam is the best amongst them. He also does an analysis of the Bhagavatam's origins, and it's why it was written by Vyasadeva, at what point in his career, and what he saw when he wrote down the Bhagavatam or before he wrote the Bhagavatam, to show that even from that perspective, in terms of its origins, its genesis, the Bhagavatam is the highest amongst all the Puranas. It's the spotless, or the Amala Purana. So he runs through the argument in this way, and I encourage you to read Tattva Sandarbha carefully in order to see how he builds this argument from the very ground of epistemology. How do we know what we know? And what can we rely on? To coming to the Vedas, to coming then to the Puranas and Itihasas, to coming then to Srimad Bhagavatam. And then when he finishes this, he says, so therefore in this book, we will just study Srimad Bhagavatam. We're going to set aside all the other scriptures. We might bring them in incidentally to support some idea, but basically our concern is not to explain any of them. If we are convinced if we explain Bhagavatam, we've explained it all. If you learn Bhagavatam, you've learned it all. Okay? So this is the premise, the conviction that he begins with, or gets halfway through this Tattva Sandarbha. He's at this point, that the Srimad Bhagavatam is the highest source of knowledge. It's the highest pramana. Now, there are so many things I could say in terms of the position of Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavatam's uniqueness amongst the Vedic literature, and why what Jiva Goswami is saying is very much substantiated. It's very reasonable. It's not just a matter of, well, I've got a dozen quotations here and a dozen quotations there about the Bhagavatam. From an analysis of the Bhagavatam from every perspective, linguistic, historical, in terms of content, devotionally, philosophically, the Bhagavatam at the very least is unique amongst Vedic literature. But if you study a little further, realize not just is unique, but really is the very best. It's the cream of the cream. That's a whole nother discussion, a whole nother seminar actually on the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam and what really sets it apart and why it's the case that all of our acharyas dedicated their lives to just illuminating this one scripture, the Srimad Bhagavatam, where you see everyone congregating around the Srimad Bhagavatam and lifting it up as the highest and juiciest, most rasika source of wisdom that's present there. But I want to leave that discussion at this point in order to move further into what Jiva Goswami is doing in the Sandarbhas, which really the majority of it lies here in this point number 2. This is sort of the heart of what's happening after he's done the initial groundwork in the first half of the Tattva Sandarbha. Okay? Now, I see maybe let's take 2 or 3 questions real quick, if about this in particular, if anything so far is unclear. Go ahead.
Prabhuji, you said highest philosophy. So I just want to understand, what does highest philosophy mean? I mean, if someone is following the second highest philosophy, it means his destination will be different. He has to take birth again to... What exactly are we saying? You know, like certain South India believe Vishnu is the topmost, not Krishna. I mean, these are very esoteric things in a way. So what does highest philosophy mean?
The highest philosophy basically here means 2 things. One is that it is the conclusion of the set of pramanas that we have, okay? So the set of pramanas, or the source of valid knowledge, are these sets of scriptures. So what is their conclusion? It is the conclusion of the set of the source of knowledge that we've agreed to accept together. And the second is that it is productive of the highest result, or the best goal, the most worthy goal. Okay? And that goal is elucidated in the Sandarbhas as we move down into Bhakti and Priti itself. But it's a very good question that I ask you to hold on to until tomorrow, because tomorrow we're going to talk about, when we compare Jiva Goswami, what he's saying with, say, Shankaracharya, we'll see that a lot of the time, in the end, to decide between philosophies, it all boils down to goal. What is your goal? What do you see as the worthiest thing to achieve? Because if your goal is different, then there is every reason why Shankaracharya's philosophy might actually be better. because he's got a very different goal in mind. And the debate really functions on this question of prayojana. What is the worthy prayojana? And when you don't have that in mind or agreed upon clear, then you can't really work the other steps to it. So we understand that prayojana is not something we can have now, but we do have to have an idea of the prayojana even at the beginning, otherwise there's no question of moving forward because you don't know which way to move, right? Which direction to move. Yes?
Prabhu, could you elaborate on that point on when you said that the Puranas are better than the Vedas, that point. The point which you mentioned was the Vedas are not accessible and some of the meaning is lost.
Yes.
Those by itself do not seem to be reason enough to say that Puranas are better than Vedas, right?
Yes.
The reason why I'm asking this question is because particularly the Mayavadis, even Arya Samajas and even people from Islam, they actually say that, okay, actually see in your Vedic scriptures, they are the Shruti, they are supposed to be regarded at a higher position, and they say that God is impersonal.
Yes.
And you people are actually following the Puranas, Bhagavad Gita, and so it is not correct. So how would we refute this?
Yes, actually this point about the Vedas is, it's become popular these days, and I know a lot of people criticize in this way as you're describing, but in fact this is one of the points that's most widely agreed upon amongst philosophers of India, that the Vedas are not enough, they're not sufficient. In other words, this is not a Mayavadi versus Vaishnava argument. Even Shankaracharya would agree with the point that the 4 Vedas, the Samhitas, are not sufficient for human beings. Because he specifically makes this point at the beginning of Vedanta Sutra, his commentary, that once you're done with the Vedas, you're done with Karma Kanda, and you're done with all the rituals that you think will get you happiness in this world, then you can start to study spiritual knowledge, right? So whether you study Krishna's statements in the Gita criticizing the Vedas, or you study Shankaracharya, or you study the Upanishads, everywhere that point is consistent, that the Vedas are not sufficient. Okay? With the Upanishads, now you start getting into territory where everyone starts to agree that the Upanishads are important, they are useful. To what degree they're useful, this is a matter of some discussion. But the Vedas are not a matter of discussion. It means they have the status of Shruti because they're coming from the beginning of time. But just because they are the most ancient doesn't make them the highest. And so with the Vedas in particular, everyone agrees that the fruit that they deliver and the goal that they promise is insufficient. Because the goal that they are heading to is basically a comfortable life in the material world. And that comfortable life, if that's all you want, by all means the Vedas are the best pramana for you. But considering the fact that we've had enough of the material world and we've realized that we can no longer achieve happiness just in the material world, which is the beginning of knowledge, says Shankaracharya, therefore we have to get beyond that now. And we have to leave that behind. Okay.
Prabhu, this second point what you mentioned, that he establishes that Bhagavatam is the teaching Mahaprabhu's philosophy, right? But previously you also mentioned he extensively uses Ramanujacharya's philosophy and Madhvacharya.
Yes.
So using those, I mean, if he has to say that Mahaprabhu's philosophy is the highest, he has to trounce those other philosophies. But he is also using those as stepping stones to build his point.
Yes,
so it seems to be
that's a very good question. In fact, one of the things you see when you study the Sandarbhas is Jiva Goswami is not interested in reinventing the wheel or in criticizing another philosophy for the sake of criticizing them. He does not see the success of his argument depending on the destruction of everyone else's argument. In fact, his whole approach is, let's take truth where we find it, bring it together, and then show the highest layer of that in Mahaprabhu's philosophy. He will draw the best points from Ramanujacharya, from Madhvacharya, even from Shankaracharya. And he has this one statement in the Sandarbhas where he says, there should be a Brahma Sandarbha, a Sandarbha about Brahman. We've got one on Paramatma, we've got one on Bhagavan. But he says, the Advaitins, they've already done it really well. If you want to know about Brahman, you go talk to them. And he's very happy to take their ideas and say, you've done it well, so why should I reinvent the wheel? If Ramanujacharya has already made the argument about why the Pancharatras are essential parts of the Vedas, why should he make that argument again? In fact, Jiva Goswami refuses to repeat arguments. He will basically just quote the first line and the last line of an argument from another Acharya and say, you go read the rest, they've done a good job with this, and then we continue onward from there, because I consider that point to be proven. So Jiva Goswami has a very eclectic feel to him on that level, where he's willing to take truth wherever he finds it. He doesn't want to rehash arguments over and over again. After all, Jiva Goswami is writing in the 16th century. The 16th century means there's been over 1,000 years of systematic discussion about the Upanishads and the Gita so far in India. There is no reason for him to try to do that whole thing over again. There's no time for that even. What he's saying is Mahaprabhu gave something that is so much higher and so much more powerful. Let's talk about that. I'm going to put that layer. The cake's been cooked already. All I need to do is put the icing on it. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to try to bake that cake again. Okay? Okay, so let's take just one more question and then we continue.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Phil. Okay.
So in this panoramic view, Prabhu, like where the Vedanta Sutras stands, because later we see like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Baldev Vidyabhushan has to defend the philosophy by giving the commentary. So did Jiva Goswami tell us about Vedanta Sutras?
Yes, Jiva Goswami provides a commentary on the first 5 sutras of Vedanta Sutra in the Paramatma Sandarbha. And that's going to be the topic of tomorrow's discussion. So stay tuned for that. Okay, let's move on, just because this is really the heart of what's coming, and I promise I'll leave time at the end for a good question and answer session, because I just wanted to make sure that we could clarify some basic things here and then move on to this, which is really the heart of this afternoon session. Okay, so the Bhagavatam is the highest source of knowledge. Then the Bhagavatam teaches Mahaprabhu's philosophy. This is really the hard part. The Bhagavatam teaches Mahaprabhu's philosophy. Because both of these things are very large and unwieldy. The Bhagavatam consists of 18,000 verses. How are you going to show that the consistent message there is Mahaprabhu's philosophy? This is going to be tough. In a book as varied as Bhagavatam, you can find statements of all different varieties and different shapes and sizes and everything. Take, for example, the churning of the ocean Leela, where everything, when the poison comes out, Lord Vishnu directs the demigods to go to Lord Shiva, and he goes personally, and he offers all these beautiful prayers to Lord Shiva, how you are the supreme Lord, and you're the cause of all causes, and you're the original, source of this and that, and the purports are very nice, and Prabhupada says, this verse is actually meant to glorify Lord Vishnu. And then the next purport, this verse is actually meant to glorify Lord Vishnu. But the point is, if you take that on its own, out of context, one could argue, well, Bhagavatam is teaching Lord Shiva is the greatest. And you take some other section and you might find some defense of karma kanda activity, or you might... 18,000 verses is a lot, and it's a very large work. Similarly, Mahaprabhu's philosophy is massive, as we know from our own study. It's huge. There are so many points being made. How do you take the one and show that it's teaching the other? Now, Jiva Goswami's strategy in the first 3 Sandarbhas is to say, okay, these are both very, very large entities, and they're both difficult to digest. Let's condense each side. Let's try to find the essence, essential kernels. Condense the Bhagavatam into what we think is the essential sections or portions of Srimad Bhagavatam that give its essential meaning. Condense Mahaprabhu's philosophy into its essential component or components, and then show that this equals this. Right? That the essence of Bhagavatam is identical to the essence of Mahaprabhu's philosophy. And in this way, the argument is proven. It's shown. Okay? Now, let's start with the Bhagavatam. Okay? If you, let's start with Mahaprabhu's philosophy. If I ask you this question, okay, tell me one concept or one idea that encapsulates all of Mahaprabhu's philosophy. One idea, one concept, one term, one thought that is the essence of it, that brings it together. And if you've heard this seminar before, you're not allowed to answer, okay? Because I want some genuine thought put into this. What is what concept would that be? Okay, one at a time, yes. Achintya Bheda Bheda.
Golokera Premadhana Harinam Sankirtana.
Golokera Premadhana Harinam Sankirtana.
Following in the footsteps of gopis. Is that
Following in the footsteps of the gopis. Krishna Prema. Jiva Swarup Hoy Krishna Nityadas. Oh, huh? Serve Srimati Radharani. So now, let me clarify the question a little more to narrow down the possibilities. Remember, we're looking for one philosophical concept that encapsulates all of Mahaprabhu's philosophy. Now, what I mean by that is, remember the first three Sandarbhas, Jiva Goswami is not going to get into anything that is uniquely, that is Leela or Rasika related. He's not interested in this point at proving that Madhurya Rasa is greater than the other rasas or anything like that. If we're looking for philosophical ideas, what would you choose? Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam? Ete chansa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam?
Goper Pad Kamaleva Das Das Dasanu Das.
Okay, so again, we don't want to head into the gopi direction just yet. Okay, Cheto Darpana Marjanam, good. Yes, okay, but philosophical ideas, okay? Practice again, we're not going to practice yet. Bhakti is there, Bhakti Sandarbha, Priti Sandarbha is there. But ideas, if you wanted to encapsulate his idea to a philosopher who wasn't going to practice Krishna consciousness at all, but wanted to know the idea, the key idea, what is it? Achintya Bheda Bheda is actually a very reasonable suggestion, except it's not really an idea, it's the name for the entire philosophy. So we're looking for an idea that encapsulates it. And it comes to this basically, several of you have said, Ete cham sakala punsa, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Except here, we won't work with the Krishna part, okay? Just the idea of Bhagavan. Now, what does this idea of Bhagavan mean? Bhagavan, in other words, what Jiva Goswami is pinpointing, he's saying Mahaprabhu's philosophy, in terms of the philosophical ideas, the key concept that we need to work on to prove from Bhagavatam is the concept of Bhagavan, namely that God is a person. And everything related to him is personal and it's transcendental. The idea of Bhagavan for Jiva Goswami is a technical term. In other words, the word Bhagavan is also a generic term in Sanskrit. You can, Bhagavan Narada, Bhagavan Vyasa. It can mean just a respectable person. That's not how he means it. The word Bhagavan here, he's defining in a very specific sense. Okay? As God is a person. God is a person. And the most important quality or attribute of Bhagavan is what? What is, God is a person. What's his most important attribute that makes him a person? 6 opulences, attractive, loving, feelings, relationships, personal exchange. Jiva Goswami, all of these things that you said are correct. Okay, they're all correct, and Jiva Goswami includes all of them in the definition of what it means to be a person and what it means to be Bhagavan. But as you were saying, the concept that brings all of these qualities together is the idea of Shakti. That God has energies. Okay. This is the one attribute or quality that includes all other qualities. When you talk about something that is personal, that's individual, what we mean by that is that that object, that idea, has the ability to interact with other things, to act, to behave, to display certain qualities. These are all the Lord's Shaktis. So the material world, it's his external energy, Bahiranga Shakti. All of us, Tatastha Shakti. The spiritual world, Radharani, Antaranga Shakti. In other words, everything that you said, all of his qualities and attributes are all different aspects of his Shakti, or his energy. If you can show that God is a person, and that person has energies that he displays and acts with and demonstrates in the world, you have shown the core idea, which is the foundation of Mahaprabhu's philosophy, which is essentially a personalistic philosophy founded on the idea that God is a person. Now, Jiva Goswami, he provides, at the beginning of Bhagavat Sandarbha, he provides actually this is more towards the end of Bhagavat Sandarbha, he provides a definition of Bhagavan, which is this one here, our online. Thank you. So, Bhagavat Sandarbha, near the end, after he's spent all of his time talking and proving this idea of Bhagavan, he provides us with a definition, a technical definition of Bhagavan that actually in some ways serves as a summary of the entire second Sandarbha, entire Bhagavat Sandarbha. It's really a breathtaking definition of Bhagavan. What we mean, what Mahaprabhu means when he speaks of the word Bhagavan. The piece of paper you've received has a single sentence on it. Well, two if you count the English translation. One of also Jiva Goswami's incredible qualities is his ability to write these sentences with words that are very large. Every time you see a dash in the Sanskrit, that's still the same word, which has been broken up for our convenience. So, this passage has some of the longest words I've encountered in Sanskrit. Now, I'm going to read the Sanskrit for you just for fun, even though the translation is there. Okay? Here we go. Tad evam satchidanandaika rupaha swarupa bhutachintya vichitrananta shakti yukto dharmatveva eva dharmitvam nirbhedatva eva nana bhedavatvam arupitva eva rupitvam vyapakatva eva madhyamatvam satyam evetyadi paraspara viruddhananta gunanidhi Sthula Sukshma Vilakshana Swaprakashakhanda Swaswarupa Bhuta Shri Vigraha. That's one word. Sthula Sukshma Vilakshana Swaprakashakhanda Swaswarupa Bhuta Shri Vigrahas Tatha Bhuta Bhagavatakya Mukhaika Vigraha Vyanjita Tadrishananta Vigrahas. Another word. Tadrisha Swarupa Shaktiravirbhava Lakshana Lakshmi Ranjita Vamamsha Swaprabha Visheshakara Parichada Parikara Nijadhamasu Virajamanakara Swarupa Shakti Vilasa Lakshana Adbhuta Guna Leeladi Chamatkaritatma Ramadi Gano Nija Samanya Prakashakara Brahma Tattvo Nija Shayaika Jivana Jivakhya Tatastha Shaktir Ananta Prapancha Vyanjita Swabhasa Shaktir Guno Bhagavan Iti. This is Bhagavan. So, Bhagavan : this is Bhagavan, okay? Translation. He who is the very form of existence, consciousness and bliss, Satchidananda, who possesses inconceivable, multifarious and unlimited energies, right there, the very first thing, that are of his own nature, who is the ocean of unlimited, mutually contradictory qualities, such that in him both the attribute and the possessor of attributes, the lack of differences and the varieties of differences, formlessness and form, pervasiveness and centrality. That means located in one place. Okay, so he's pervading everywhere and located in one place. All are true. Whose beautiful form is distinct from both gross and subtle entities, self-luminous and consisting entirely of his own nature, who has unlimited such forms that are manifested by his chief form called Bhagavan, whose left side is beautified by Lakshmi, the manifestation of his personal energy, suitable to his own form, who resides in his own abode along with his associates, who are furnished with a form that is a special manifestation of his own splendor, who astonishes the hosts of Atma Ramas, those who take pleasure in the self, by his wonderful qualities, pastimes, etc., which are characterized by the play of his personal energy, whose own generic brilliance is manifested in the form of the reality of Brahman, who is the sole shelter and life of his marginal energy, called the living entities, Jivas, whose mere reflected energy are the modes of nature, gunas, visible in the unlimited phenomenal world. He is Bhagavan. So, this concept here captures it all. It's a technical term that refers to the heart of Mahaprabhu's philosophy. God is a person and he possesses energies. He possesses shaktis. If we can show that the Bhagavatam is teaching the idea of Bhagavan, this is what it's teaching, then we can show that the Bhagavatam is teaching Mahaprabhu's philosophy. Because this covers it. This is it. This is the heart of it all. In fact, one thing you ought to notice is when Prabhupada translates Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and so on, there are some terms that he translates in a way that to the world seems very odd. And one of those translations is the translation for the word Bhagavan, which is Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, what's so interesting about this translation is that Srila Prabhupada attempts to do exactly what Jiva Goswami is doing here, which is to use the word Bhagavan as the catch-all, as the repository for the entire philosophy. Everyone else translates it, Blessed Lord, which is, frankly, dictionary-wise, it's okay. It's a fine translation. But that's not what it means for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's not the Blessed Lord. It doesn't even mean God. It's got a very technical definition to it. And Prabhupada captures it beautifully. You know, here we need a paragraph. Prabhupada captures that in 3 words. Supreme Personality of Godhead. Each one of those words is essential to the definition. Godhead. Okay, so we're talking about the highest reality, Godhead. But Godhead is a category, Godhood. In this category of Godhead, many persons can reside. There's different devas. There's Lord Vishnu, there's Lord Ramachandra, there's Nrsingadev, there's Krishna, there's Lord Shiva, there's Indra, there's Vayu. Even we have some participation in the quality of Godhead. But we're not talking about all of these, right? We're talking about the supreme in this category. And there's only one of them, right? Ekala Ishar Krishna Arsha Bhritya. There's only one in that category. That's the supreme. And that one supreme in that category, what's his most important quality? Personality. He's a person. He's not the highest abstract substance that exists. No, it's a person. Each one of those 3, supreme personality of Godhead, is essential to the definition of Bhagavan and captures that definition. Prabhupada, as the ideal follower of Jiva Goswami, recognized the fact that the term Bhagavan is the key to establishing Mahaprabhu's philosophy. It's the essence, and it needs to be translated properly. And God simply doesn't cut it, because God is too flabby a translation. It can cover too much in its category. So, Supreme Personality of Godhead. The other amazing thing that Prabhupada did was with bhakti, which is almost universally translated as devotion. And Prabhupada specified it as devotional service, which again encapsulates a lot more and a lot more faithful to Mahaprabhu and what he means by that. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. Right there in the translation, he's unpacking the definition of what it is. So, if you've ever wondered, Supreme Personality of Godhead, and if you've ever been questioned as to why this very, very roundabout way of saying something that would otherwise be really simple. I receive this question all the time from students. Why not just God? Well, why this? Then here's why. This is exactly why. Right? It's the concept of Bhagavan that we're after. The heart of Mahaprabhu's philosophy. Now, throughout the Bhagavad Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami is interested in showing two things about Bhagavan. The first is that he is aprakrita, okay, non-material or spiritual. And the second, that everything connected to him is swabhavika, is inherent, it's part of his own nature. Okay, what does this mean? Jiva Goswami, Bhagavad Sandarbha, the majority of it basically consists of the following argument repeated again and again and again. Jiva Goswami says Bhagavan, he's a person. So he has a body, he has a form. That form is not material, and it's part of his own nature. It's essential to him. What does that mean? That it's not something else from the outside, like body and soul for us. One day, this body is going to die, and I will go off into some other form. So there's a difference, right? The spirit soul that is me, I have been covered, encased by something that is not me, which is this material body, and that's part of the whole problem that we face in the material world, is the imposition of upadhis, of all these things that are placed upon us which are not us. Yes? There is no such condition with Krishna. His body is him. It's part of his own nature. It's essential to him. It is just as spiritual as he is. No difference between body and soul. Then Jiva Goswami will say, Krishna's abode, God is a person, so he has abode too. That abode is non-material, and it's part of his own nature. Then Krishna's clothing, his paraphernalia, it's not material, it's part of his own nature. Krishna's associates, non-material, part of his own nature. And Jiva Goswami will do this again and again and again in the Bhagavad Sandarbha until you say, I got the point, I understand. Now, why do you think he's doing this again and again, ad infinitum? Why is he making this point? Why is it so important? Well, look at it this way. Say we got Krishna here. Well, we do have Krishna here. And everything about him, his form, we know, is spiritual. It's not material, it's part of his own nature. Everything's fine. Suppose we get just one thing. Krishna's dhoti. Okay? It turns out that his clothing is actually material. And it's not part of his own nature. What is the problem we are faced with? First question, what's the problem if something connected to Krishna is not spiritual? If it's material in nature, what problem does that cause?
Everything else can also be material.
Well, it's temporary, right? And it's subject to decay. And so all of a sudden, if Krishna's body, Krishna's dhoti, anything turns out to be material, it means that In Krishna, with Krishna, in the spiritual world, there's something which is temporary, which is decaying, which is ignorant, which is miserable, the opposite of Satchidananda. And those are qualities we cannot allow into the existence of God. Because by very definition, God is Satchidananda. He's eternal, he's conscious, he's aware, and he's full of joy or happiness. That's the problem with material. That we understand. This is why we know Krishna cannot have a material body. Because then that means Krishna is covered by the material energy. Yes, just like us. He's going to be covered, he's going to be controlled by the forces of material nature. He's going to grow old, he's going to die just like us, and that can't be God. Otherwise, what's the difference between him and us? But this one is a little bit more of a challenge. Okay? Swabhavika. Why does everything connected with God have to be himself? Have to be his own nature? Be part of him?
Because if it's acquired from someone else or some other source, that source is higher.
Okay, so if that something is acquired from someone else, it's different from him, then you've got a couple of problems. One is that the potential problem that now you have two realities. Okay? Suppose you have Krishna's dhoti. Okay? And Krishna's dhoti is not Krishna, we discover. It's not part of his nature. Now, there are two realities in this world. Okay? There is Krishna, who is the cause of all causes and the encompasses everything and the source of everything, and there's his dhoti. And both of these realities, which one is supreme? You have a potential contender for the position of the divine. Okay? There's a second option, a second reality. This is why the Upanishads say, Ekam eva dvitiyam, that God is one without a second. Because as soon as you introduce a potential second reality, you've got a potential God there. And ours may not turn out to be God. Okay? That's one problem, is you've got a potential second reality. The other problem is, even if that second reality turns out to be not God, and we're sure the dhoti is not God, it's actually Krishna who's God. Even then, when you have a second reality associated with God that is not him, then the Lord becomes relative instead of absolute. In other words, his existence can now be defined or described in relation to something that is not him. Something that is different from him. Let me explain. Our existence is relative. My existence is relative. Why? Because my presence here is relative to this temple. If this temple were not here, I would not be standing here. If Delta Airlines did not exist, I would likely not be standing here either. If my parents did not exist, I would not be standing here. There are maybe 1,000, maybe 1,000,000 factors relative to which my existence is possible. Okay? I exist in relation to those things. And therefore my existence, everything about me is contingent. It's not absolute truth, it's contingent truth, it's relative truth. This is why I am not the absolute truth. Because how could I be absolute? You know, like Prabhupada says, if you're the absolute, you have a toothache, you have to go to the dentist. That is relative, you're contingent, your existence depends on someone else. Krishna, on the other hand, is a being who includes everything within him and outside of whom nothing exists. And so his existence is not relative in any way, it is absolute. So, if Krishna is there and his dhoti is there, the dhoti cannot be a second reality. It has to be part of Krishna's own nature. It has to be spiritual, just like him. Prabhupada made this point in so many ways in his lectures and conversations, pointing to the microphone and saying, it's being used in Krishna's service, this is spiritual. Right? Why? Because we cannot afford to let through even one little thing besides Krishna outside of the net here. Otherwise, we lose it all. As soon as you make God relative with one thing, relative to one thing, he's no longer God. He's not the absolute truth anymore. So Jiva Goswami is so very careful in making sure everything is caught, that we get the point crystal clear, that everything in relation to Krishna is not material and it's part of his own nature. So, what is Krishna's dhoti? It is Krishna. What is Krishna's abode? It is Krishna. What is Krishna's form, his body? It is Krishna. Anything in relation to Krishna is Krishna. Now, before everyone panics, okay, Radhika Ramana has shown up here to teach Mayavad philosophy, okay? There is another side to this, okay, which is that everything we've just discussed is also separate from Krishna for a very straightforward reason. You can have many different individual finite things, okay? We are Krishna's energy, right? Which means what? We are not material and we are Krishna, right? Prabhupada even says this in his own purports. But that statement has to be immediately followed by the statement, according to Mahaprabhu's philosophy, that we are not Krishna. Krishna's dhoti is Krishna, but it's also not Krishna. It's different from Krishna. Because any one of these things taken in and of itself is too limited, it's too narrow, it's too small to be Krishna. This is the relationship between the energy and the energetic, the Shakti and the Shaktiman, which is something that we're going to, there's a lot of things I'm promising for tomorrow now, but this is also something we're going to look at tomorrow, is particularly the idea of Achintya Bheda Bheda and how it works. Fundamentally, Achintya Bheda Bheda means that you have to say two things simultaneously. We are Krishna and we are not Krishna. Both have to be said together. That is a contradiction. And contradictions don't make any sense. They're inconceivable. This is why it is Achintya Bheda Bheda. Is because two statements have to be said together. And we cannot logically put them together. Because it is 100% true that this world is Krishna. It is 100% true that the world is different from Krishna. It's Bheda and it's Abheda. That is inconceivable. This is where you get Achintya Bheda Bheda. Now, how this works and how Jiva Goswami builds it, we'll see next time when we talk about Vedanta. I think I want to move on now with further steps in Jiva Goswami's strategy. Okay. So let's stop here for 5 minutes and see if there are any questions just in relation to this concept of Bhagavan before we move on. Yes, Prabhu.
So, just a minute. Yeah, you mentioned about the 6 Sandarbhas. So I was just questioning that, is it in a order? If it is in order, then, how about after Tattva it is Bhagavan? It should have been Paramatma, because in Bhagavatam it says Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavaneti Sabdayati. So it could be. And then also there are 8 steps in devotional services, starting from Shraddha, it's ending in Prema, but here it is talking about Preeti.
Yes.
So how it is it same as Prem, or what is the difference here in Bhakti and Preeti?
Jiva Goswami likes the term Preeti. He's fond of the word Preeti, and he often uses it in place of Prema. But the two mean exactly the same thing. In fact, they come from the same verbal root in Sanskrit, pri, which means to love. But they're both derivatives of the same verb, to love. So it's a different choice of word or term that he uses. In terms of your first question, which was...
Because the first one, if it is going in order, you mentioned about...
Okay, the order question. So,
yeah.
Tattva Bhagavat Paramatma, there's very good reason for that. Because our philosophy of Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan functions from the top down and not from the bottom up. In other words, we do not construct Bhagavan from Brahman. We don't build Bhagavan out of Brahman and Paramatma. Rather, we start with Bhagavan, this concept, as our starting point. God is a person, and then we systematically reduce or hide or suppress his qualities in order to achieve, in order to get to Paramatma, and suppress them further in order to get to Brahman. So the approach, and this is when we speak about Shaktis and Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan next time, Achintya Bheda Bheda basically, tomorrow, we'll see how this works. But Brahman is derived from Bhagavan and not the other way around. With Mahaprabhu's philosophy, the starting point, we have to start with Bhagavan. God is a person. And then we can derive whatever other features we want from it. It's not, in fact, a very common Mayavad approach is to start with the idea of the impersonal absolute and then say, well, occasionally that impersonal absolute takes on personality. That's what we call Bhagavan. So because we don't take that approach, which is bottom-up approach, therefore Jiva Goswami begins straight away with the concept of Bhagavan. He said, this is it. This is where we begin. This is our premise. It's our argument. And then we can suppress as much as we want in order to get to other features that you might be interested in.
Thank you.
Yes, bro.
So when you say something he possesses is non-material and inherent in its nature, the material energy also he possesses it, right? So the material energy and the matter in it is not spirit.
It is. Fundamentally it is, right? So Prabhupada actually makes this point very nicely in many places where he says that material is actually spiritual. It's just that it appears material because we have separated it from Krishna. We don't see its connection with Krishna. But the minute you connect the material back to Krishna, you don't connect it, you recognize that connection. You realize that there's actually nothing material. The material energy ceases to function in the way that we think it functions. It ceases to function as a source of bondage. So the material energy is there. But again, as we'll see tomorrow, the material energy is merely a specification of one energy. Krishna possesses one energy. This is Shakti. And that Shakti is analyzed in different ways based upon its functions. But that function is purely dependent on our misconception, which is we see it different from Krishna. But all of the energies are more or less part of Krishna's own nature. And the key is that more or less bit. The question you raise is a very, very important one. Namely, how close can we allow the material energy to come to Krishna without letting the material energy affect Krishna's perfection? Right? If we say the material world is part of Krishna's own nature, we've got a problem because the material world is temporary, it's miserable, it's ignorant, it's got all kinds of problems, and we don't want those problems to be part of Krishna's own nature. And yet, we cannot let it be separate from Krishna either, because there's only one reality, right? Vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yaj jnanam advayam. There's only one reality. Non-dual reality. That's Krishna, period. So we got to keep it close, but we can't get it too close.
I understand the inconceivability.
So actually that part is inconceivable, of course, but we will talk about it. We'll explain how Jiva Goswami brings it close and still keeps it separate. And in fact, other acharyas attempt to do the same thing. Shankaracharya had a very novel solution to it, where he said, if it gets close, it's a problem. So let's just make it disappear. The material world does not exist, so we'll see this next time, okay?
Thank you, Prabhu, for the answer. I have one more question in the previous thing you have said. So in the Tattva Sandarbha, he establishes the Puranas and Itihasas are higher than the Vedas. But again, the quotations we see are from Puranas and Itihasas rather than from Vedas. So why couldn't we find any quotations from Vedas which say the Puranas and Itihasas are much more than that?
He actually presents a couple quotations from the Upanishads, which are part of the Vedas, in which the Upanishads list the Puranas and the Itihasas as part of the Vedas and say about how they come from the breath of the Supreme Lord.
So one more objection I face to this is the Upanishads are having the Sanskrit which are not archaic as Samhitas. So how do you defend that part? So you don't have any quotation from Samhita and these things when questions come up like that?
Yeah, not from the Samhitas. There's no quotations from the Rig, Yajur, Sam, or Atharva Vedas stating that they are not the best. But that's understandable. That's understandable because the Vedas are the first revelation from Krishna to Brahma. And as a result, it's very... See, the Vedas are meant for a particular people and a particular audience. And if you're trying to build faith in that audience, the last thing you want to say is, actually, this is not the best, this is not very good. So the Vedas are not going to self-incriminate, but it's a fact that everyone else basically agrees that they are eternal, but not ultimate. Okay. Yes, yes. A content analysis will also get to the same thing. I think Acharyas, beginning with Shankaracharya, do a wonderful content analysis of the Vedas and show quite clearly that the goals of the Vedas are very different from the goals of the Upanishads. So, if you have that as your goal, then fine, the Vedas may be good for you. But given that the goal of all the Acharyas is different, the Vedas don't suffice. Online questions.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, I have a question about the concept that you talked about, the Achintya Bheda Bheda. So
the adjective what?
About
okay.
Achintya Bheda Bheda.
Uh-huh.
My question is about the inconceivable part.
Yes.
If we understand the energetic and the energy as being simultaneously similar and distinct, the concept actually becomes conceivable, right? It's not so much inconceivable. So my question is, why is it still referred to as Achintya?
Oh, I see. Okay. So tomorrow I have a whole section on Achintya, on what Achintya means and what the Goswamis mean when they say Achintya. There's actually two senses in which they talk about Achintya. So if we can hold on to that question, the answer would take actually quite some time, 15-20 minutes. But that's the section for tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Achintya Bheda Bheda is for tomorrow, yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
I have this related question to the Vedas and the Puranas. So, if I am understanding correctly, Puranas and Upanishads, they are churning of the Vedas. I mean, yes. They derive information from Vedas. So when you say that Vedas are not all in all, this is alluding to the fact that they don't present the message in the way it should have. Clearly, as how Upanishads or Puranas or for that matter, Srimad Bhagavatam presents. But the information is there.
Yes and no. Think of it like this. Bhagavatam describes the Vedas as a tree. Nigama kalpataror, right? So it's the Vedic desire tree. Now from a desire tree you can get anything you like. But the Bhagavatam is the fruit of that desire tree. Now when you look at the branches and you look at the trunk and you dig in the roots, will you find the mango? No. But yes, in the sense that it's present in the tree. Somewhere the mango is present in the bark and in the veins and in the roots, because that's where the mango came from, right? It didn't drop from the sky, it came from the tree. So it's present in some sense, it's latent there, right? But it's not appreciable. You cannot taste it. In fact, no one can taste it unless the fruit actually emerges. So in practice, if in theory, yes, Krishna is latent in the Vedas. He's present there. And Madhvacharya, for example, has a wonderful commentary where he shows how the Rig Veda, Krishna is there in the Rig Veda, right? So he's there, but no one really, other than someone like Vyasadeva and Madhvacharya, can actually taste him there, or see him, or feel him. So for all practical purposes, he's not there. You see what I mean? So in theory it's different, but in practice, you cannot taste the fruit from the roots. Bhagavatam. Nigama kalpatoror galitam phalam. This is third verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. Yes, yes, exactly.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I'm interested to know why Jiva Goswami used the term Lakshmi Ranjita Vamamsha in this verse, because in Brahma Samhita we have Lakshmi Sahasra Shatsambhrama Sevyamano. So if you want to define God, like versus Radharani, why he used the term Lakshmi on the left side?
It's a good question. This is exactly what I was saying earlier. Because the common mode of discourse amongst learned people in his time who are of general Vaishnava background means Vishnu and Lakshmi. Vishnu is Bhagavan, Lakshmi is his consort. So he's not interested in parsing out the fine details at this point in the Sandarbhas. That'll happen in the Krishna Sandarbha. In the back.
I was reading about Shrutis and Smriti, and they said the Vedas are part of Shrutis, and
Yes.
they are divine's origin content.
Yes.
And as far as the Smriti, like Bhagavatam, any Purans or any Itihas, they are part of Smriti, so they are not original divine text, but they are derived. So what's the difference between the divine's original content versus derived content, and why should not we look towards Vedas more than to the Bhagavatam or towards the Itihasa?
Yeah. So I don't think the distinction between Shruti and Smriti is original versus derived. It's distinction is about the mode of their teaching, that Shruti Smriti distinction, rather than about content or about source. There's a popular saying that the Vedas, they instruct like a teacher does. They sit you down and they tell you. Whereas the Puranas and Itihasas, they instruct like a friend does. They tell you stories and examples. You know, last time someone did that, here's what happened. I suggest you don't either. So like a friend would, okay? And kavya or poetry instructs like a lover would instruct, with sweet and soft words where you're getting some heavy messages but you don't realize it because you're so entranced by the beauty of the person sitting in front of you that they can get anything past you because of that reason. So kavya is so poetic and so beautiful. And Bhagavatam, it says, teaches by all three of these methods, as a guru, as a friend, and as a lover, all three. So Smriti is the manner of teaching like a friend is. You know, I heard this story and it says like this. It's a mode of teaching. It's not a difference in terms of content or value. In fact, the Bhagavad Gita is Smriti, in the category of Smriti, technically. And yet it provides the most direct revelation from God directly from his mouth. Whereas the Vedas are mostly verses spoken by sages. So that it's a big misconception in modern Hinduism that Shruti somehow is this category of revelation which is so much higher than Smriti, which is basically like, you know, folk tales or something like that. That distinction simply doesn't hold. Throughout Vedic philosophy, there are many Smriti Shastras that have been regarded as original or as revealed knowledge as the Vedas themselves have.
But do they convey the same message?
Yes, they convey the same message. Both of them. But the Shruti in hidden form, the Smriti in more open form. Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, actually, about the dhoti of Krishna, when you said, actually got Jagannath's dhoti for you from Jagannath Puri.
Oh. Thank you. So this is Jagannath's dhoti.
This is Balram's dhoti from the chariot, on the chariot.
Wow. So this is Lord Balram then, according to...
You can best describe it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So let's move on here. Let me remind you now of what I had put on the board just before, okay, the argument. Srimad Bhagavatam is the highest source of knowledge. Then what was the next step? Bhagavatam teaches Mahaprabhu's philosophy. Therefore, Mahaprabhu's philosophy is the highest. Now, the first step, the second step. In the second step, Bhagavatam teaches Mahaprabhu's philosophy. The strategy was, let's condense Mahaprabhu's philosophy, let's condense Bhagavatam, then we can show A equals B. So we worked on condensing Mahaprabhu's philosophy into this concept of Bhagavan. We've got that. Now, we need to condense the Bhagavatam into its essential passages, its essential verses, in order to then show that the two are teaching the same thing. So here's the next question. If you had to choose a section of Srimad Bhagavatam that encapsulated its essence, that covered everything within it, it's the key of the whole text, what sections or passages would you choose? So let's write some of these. Okay, so Chatur Shloki. These are the four verses that Lord Vishnu speaks to Brahma at the beginning of creation. They are considered by many as the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam because in these verses Krishna gives Lord Brahma everything he needs to know to both create the world and to teach his first disciple Narada Muni, whom he teaches with the message of Bhagavatam, which Narada Muni then conveys to Vyasadeva, and it comes to us. So the four essential verses. What other sections would you look for? Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Okay. Why, structurally speaking, why would that be? Why would you say that that includes the essence of Bhagavatam, other than the fact that we agree with it? Yes. So, because, as you said, because then the 9th cantos then all lead to the 10th, which is Krishna's avatar. But this verse doesn't show up in the 10th canto. Do you recall where it shows up? What's the context of this verse?
Krishna's incarnations.
Yes, all the avatars have been spoken about, and those avatars, that chapter in some sense serves as the summary of the entire Bhagavatam, because it's going through all the avatars which are then elaborated in later cantos, yes? And after those avatars are finished, he's saying, but of them, of all the ones I've listed, that one is actually Bhagavan, Krishna. Okay, so in that sense, it's providing a extraction and summary of the essence of Bhagavatam. Yes? We won't take questions right now, if it's okay. Just questions will hold, but other suggestions for the essence, the essential passages of Srimad Bhagavatam.
Vyasadeva's trance.
Vyasadeva's samadhi, or trance. Why that? What would be a reason to highlight this section as the essence of Bhagavatam? Just in terms of the Bhagavatam structure, energies are spoken about many places in Bhagavatam. But why is Vyasadeva's samadhi, why ought we highlight that as a place to look for the essence of Bhagavatam? Structurally speaking, where is that story located? What function does it serve? He's despondent, yes.
Bhagavatam is the result of his mature realization.
Yes, exactly. This is the story of the Bhagavatam's origin, right? So therefore, it's a likely place to look for its essential meaning, because it's telling the reason for the Bhagavatam's creation or genesis or writing in the first place. As you're saying, he's written everything else so far, and now the fruit of in the maturity of his wisdom, the fruit of everything he's done, he's writing Srimad Bhagavatam. And what he sees in the samadhi, that's what he writes down in Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, lucky for us, that samadhi description is only about 2.5 verses long. So, if the entire Bhagavatam is present in his samadhi, and the samadhi is only 2.5 verses long, we have a ready-made summary of the entire Bhagavatam. Yes? Right? That's what we're looking for in encapsulation, a nutshell of the whole thing. Okay, so there are other place sections we could look at or talk about, but since these have been mentioned, let's look at Vyasadev's samadhi. So, Vyasadeva samadhi. Now, here's what we're doing again, okay? We want to take these sections of Srimad Bhagavatam. We've condensed Srimad Bhagavatam into these smaller sections. We want to take these sections and we want to show what? That Vyasadev's samadhi teaches us what? Bhagavan. We want to show that Vyasadeva Samadhi teaches us Mahaprabhu's philosophy, yes? But Mahaprabhu's philosophy we've condensed into the concept of Bhagavan. So what we want to do is, as we read these verses, we need to find Bhagavan in them. Now, once again, Bhagavan is not some generic concept that we're looking for. We need to find God in here. No, we're looking for that technical definition of Bhagavan that you already have in your hands. That concept of Bhagavan we need to find in these verses. We've condensed Bhagavatam into Vyasadeva Samadhi. We've condensed Mahaprabhu's philosophy into the concept of Bhagavan. Now we're going to try to equate the two. This is what Jiva Goswami is doing in the second half of Tattva Sandarbha, and also he does this again in Bhagavat Sandarbha as well. Okay? So, these are beautiful verses, so let's read them, call and response. I'll read one line and you can repeat after me. Tasmin sva ashrame vyaso badari shandamandite asinopa upasprishya pranidadhyo manaswayam bhakti yogena manasi samyak pranihite male apashyat purusham purnam mayam cha tadapashrayam yaya sammohito jiva atmanam trigunatmakam paropi manute nartham tatkritam chabhipadyate anartho pashamam sakshad bhakti yogam adhokshaje lokasya janato vidvams chakre satvata samhitam. In that place, Srila Vyasadeva, in his own ashram, which was surrounded by berry trees, sat down to meditate after touching water for purification. Thus he fixed his mind, perfectly engaging it by linking it in devotional service without any tinge of materialism. And thus he saw, and now begins his samadhi, okay? The essence of Bhagavatam, the absolute personality of Godhead along with his external energy, which was under full control. Due to this external energy, the living entity, although transcendental to the three modes of nature, thinks of himself as a material product, and thus undergoes the reactions of material miseries. The material miseries of the living entity, which are superfluous to him, can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. But the mass of people do not know this, and therefore the learned Vyasadeva compiled this Vedic literature, which is in relation to the supreme truth. So, the question is, where is Bhagavan? Just like you have, where's Waldo? So we have to find, where is Bhagavan in these verses? Technical definition of Bhagavan. First of all, where's the person? We need to look for that. Where's Bhagavan? Purusham Purnam. Okay. Apashyat Purusham Purnam. He saw the complete person. Then the most important quality of Bhagavan is his Shaktis, his energies. So where are the Shaktis? Mayam Chatad Apashrayam. This is the Lord's external energy, Maya, which is under his full control, Apashrayam, or under his full shelter. Then the marginal energy, Yaya Sammohito Jiva, and the relationship between the two is described. The material energy is under Krishna's first full control, and the Jiva is under the control of the material energy. And then the solution to the problem of this suffering is Bhakti Yogam Adokshaje. Anartho Pashamam Sakshat Bhakti Yogam. By the mitigating process of devotional service, we can get rid of all these anarthas. Now, there's one thing missing here. Where's the internal energy? Can you find her? Jiva Goswami addresses this question, and he says, in fact, the internal energy is present in the word Purusham Purnam. He says, Purusham Purna means the complete person. Just like he said, if the full moon were to come out at night, the internal energy is so closely connected with the Lord, so non-different from the Lord, that she does not require special mention. Just like if the full moon rises in the middle of the night and you say, I saw the full moon last night, you do not have to say, oh, and I saw the moon rays as well, or I saw the moon light. That would be unnecessary, because obviously if you see the full moon, you will see the moonlight. Yes. Maybe if, it's just a crescent moon, just a sliver. Maybe you didn't see the moon, but you saw its light on the ground or something. But seeing the full moon, impossible not to see the moonlight. So, when we say Krishna, the full person, complete person was there, it means Vyasadeva saw his internal energy automatically. She was there as well. So in these basically 2.5 verses, starting with Apashyat, going to, it's really 2 verses, Adhokshaje, you find Vyasadeva Samadhi, it talks basically about one thing, one concept, one idea, and that's Bhagavan. And Bhagavan is the very idea that we're looking for here. Bhagavatam is speaking about the heart of Mahaprabhu's philosophy. Now, this is Vyasadeva Samadhi. Let's take a minute to talk about the Chaturshloki. Another important place that we can find the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam is the 4 essential verses spoken by Krishna to Brahma, by Vishnu to Lord Brahma, when he's first been created. Okay, so Brahma comes out from the lotus flower. It's all dark. He cannot see anything. He can hear the waves crashing. His lotus is trembling. And when he wakes up on the lotus, the first question he asks, do you know? What's the first thing that crosses his mind? I'm hungry, I need food. Where am I and where did I come from? Right? And he starts to dig down into the base of the lotus. He goes down the stem, the original archaeologist, looking for where did we come from? Right? This actually makes a very important point, that the instinct to know our origin is natural in human society. Right? It's an instinct that is present in us from the very beginning of creation, even the first living entity. Can you imagine? He saw nothing there. There are thousands of questions he could have asked at that point. But the first question he asked is, where did I come from? And since that time, from the beginning of creation, from the most advanced societies to the most primitive, people have looked up into the sky or they've dug holes in the ground asking the same question, where did I come from? What is my origin? Krishna has placed a little homing instinct in all of us, where it's this little chip that forces us to look for our source, whether we like it or not. Every creation, even atheists are looking for that. It's something every human being has in common, is this search. You know how many millions of dollars in research are spent on asking this simple question, where did we come from, that have no practical justification financially, economically whatsoever? That money could be used in more effective ways to improve infrastructure, transportation, travel, it would be a much better use for that, and yet no one questions it. Not even the atheists, not even the government questions the billions of dollars we spent on asking this one question. It's because everyone has the question. Even Lord Brahma does. At the very beginning, where did I come from? Anyway, that was kind of a sidebar. Then the lights turn on and he sees, oh, I'm here and this is where I'm coming from. The Lord Vishnu, he sees directly in front of his eyes. He offers prayers to the Lord and prays to him for guidance and for instruction and for knowledge. And then Lord Vishnu, he speaks Actually 7 verses total, of which 4 are regarded as most essential. Just 7 verses of instruction, in which he begins. The very first verse, Aham evasam evagre. What is the first word that he speaks? Aham. In the beginning, only I existed and no one else. Even now, only I exist. And when this whole world is done, it's finished, what will remain is also just me. And he goes on from there. He talks about Maya and everything like that. Now, where is Bhagavan? I don't have the verse in front of you, but just from what I've told you, where is Bhagavan in these verses? Aham. I existed in the beginning, I exist now, I will exist in the future. I is Bhagavan. How do we know this I is Bhagavan? How do we know this is Bhagavan? This I is not just anyone. He existed, yes, at the beginning. What is the definition of Bhagavan?
Satchitananda.
He's a person, right? He's a person, that's the key. How do we know this is a person? What if I is referring to an abstract entity? How do we know it's a person here? It's the context. It's the context of the verse. Jiva Goswami says, look what happened just before. Right before this, when Brahma could see everything, and he offers prayers to Lord Vishnu does something really amazing. He gets up from his throne, he walks up to Lord Brahma, and he shakes his hand. He says, from you to me, from one creator to another, Bhadram te, good luck to you. Right? Now, you might think, well, is Radhika really existing? Is this a hologram? It's a projection. But if I come up and I shake your hand, there's very little further proof required that I am a person and I'm actually present here, right? That's one of the most clear indications of my presence, right? They say your handshake gives away a lot about you. And it does. And Vishnu comes there and he says, Bhadram te, good luck to you for what you're going to do. This is clear evidence in that whole section. Of course, there's other descriptions. It's talking about the Lord's beautiful form, his energies, and his crown, and his earrings, and his complexion. So the whole description is there. But it's very clear, just from this one gesture, that what we're dealing with here is a person. Is a person who possesses multiple energies. And just the next verse, Krishna is talking about Maya, or 2 verses down. He talks about what is Maya, and he defines that Maya. And his energies are displayed in front of Lord Brahma. So Bhagavan is there. And the only referent for Bhagavan in this verse is Aham, I. I existed. In this purport, Prabhupada has a wonderful description, which is taking directly from Jiva Goswami on this point, that he makes in Bhagavad Sandarbha. This word I is a name for the Lord. It's a primary referent of the Supreme Lord. Because, you see, there's 3 persons. There's I, in grammar, I, you, and him or her, it, out there. So I is the subject, the person speaking. You is the person being spoken to, and he or she is the person being spoken about. Okay, it's the third person. In Sanskrit, it's actually the other way around. But anyway, the point is there's 3 persons, I, you, and he or she. Now, you, when I say you, you are chanting. How many people are assumed in that sentence? 1 or 2? 2. Where's the other person? Who's saying it, right? It means if I say, I am chanting, how many people are there? One. Maybe there may be more, but there's no indication of anyone else. I'm chanting. But as soon as I say you are chanting, there's two people present. Because you who are chanting, and then it's me who am talking about you, right? And then with he or she, there's also the same thing. There's at least two, but potentially three, because I'm not talking to them, I'm talking to you about them, right? So she is chanting. So that means me, you, and her are present. The point is, you and he and she are relative constructions. Their existence implies the existence of someone else. I is an absolute construction. I exist. And the only person who can say with utmost confidence that I exist without any indication of anyone else, without depending on anyone else for their own existence, I exist, period, is Bhagavan. We've already established this fact, that everyone else's existence is relative. His is the only absolute existence. So really, the word I belongs to Krishna. Right? It doesn't belong to us. In fact, when we use the word I, it looks so bad that it's... You know what it's called in Sanskrit? It's the foundation of our problem in the material world. When we use the word aham, it's called ahankara, right? Ahankara, one translation of it is the sound of I. Right? It's this sense of kartaham iti manyate, I am the doer. It looks really bad, it sounds bad, and it's not true. Krishna says this is the basis of illusion, right? Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. The fool thinks, the bewildered person thinks, I am the doer. But when Krishna uses the word aham, how beautiful it sounds. And how often does Krishna do it in Bhagavad Gita? Manmana, but mat, by the way, in Sanskrit is a derivative of the word aham. It's the same word. Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam evaishyasi satyam te pratijane priyosi me. 6 times in one verse. If you used I 6 times in a sentence, people would say, you're the most self-obsessed person in the world. I can't stand him. I have a conversation, all he goes, I. This is terrible. It looks bad. And Krishna does it, and everyone's falling in love with him and saying, wow, how wonderful Krishna is, how beautiful, how sweet. I. Aham sarvasya prabhavo, matta sarvam prabhava. This is the most arrogant person on the planet. But it's okay, because it's true. The word I is true only of Krishna. He's the only one who really deserves to use it. Out of his mercy, he lets us use it in a derivative fashion. But we have to be always clear of the fact that the word I does not belong to us. He is the I. He is that one. We are the zero next to the one. And unless we realize that fact, we've got ahamkara, which is the source of our problem in this world. Okay? So, wonderful section, he says, on aham. Now, the final question on finding Bhagavan here is, he's there, his Shaktis are there, what about everyone else? His abode, his associates, his friends, his family? Jiva Goswami says, it's all there in aham. When he says, I exist, Krishna means, what he means to say is, I, with my friends and family and mother and father and the cowherd boys and cowherd girls in my abode in Vrindavan Dham, we all exist. And when I first read that, I thought, what? Krishna in this verse, what he's directly saying, aham eva, only I existed. And now you're telling me that everyone else existed with him too? And his abode and all his paraphernalia? And Jiva Goswami, he makes, he anticipates this argument, and he says, look, when a king says, or when you say the sentence, suppose I said to you, oh look, there goes the president. What do you expect to see with that statement? There goes the president. Suppose I were to say, look behind you, there goes the president. What would you see there? What do you expect? You expect a motorcade, right? Of limos and police cars and everything. There goes the president. you expect maybe 100 things, maybe Air Force One, or maybe the military, or maybe the local police, or the mayor. You expect a lot, right? What you don't expect is Mr. Barack Obama just walking on his own as if with no one there at all. It's impossible to imagine. Even when they show that with him jogging across the lawn or something, there's at least 10 Secret Service officers hiding in the bush and making sure everything's okay. Right? There's no, when he says, there goes the king, Jiva Goswami gives this example, there goes the king, that means all his paraphernalia and associates with him. In fact, most of the time when you say there goes the president, you don't even see the president. You see everything but the president, right? You just see the whole motorcade. So, similarly, if I were to tell you, I lived in England, what comes to mind? Not me living in some solipsistic sense where it was just me floating in the sky all alone. No, you assume I lived in England means he was there, he had friends, he had shoes, he had books, he had a house, he had everything. Right? So in the same way, Jiva Goswami says, when Krishna says, Aham eva samevagre, in the beginning I existed, that means Krishna, with all his associates and all his abode and all his friends and all his family and all of these things that we know is part of the idea of Bhagavan. So God is a person, he's got all these qualities, and he's got all these associates. All of these things, the idea of Bhagavan, is found in the Chaturshloki, it's found in Vyasadev's Samadhi as well. And in many other such places, Jiva Goswami looks at, several others, he consistently demonstrates the same thing, that Bhagavatam teaches us about Bhagavan. In this way, the Bhagavatam teaches us Mahaprabhu's philosophy, and therefore the Mahaprabhu's philosophy is the highest philosophy there, because it is based on the highest pramana, which is Bhagavatam. So, with these two examples, I'm going to stop here, and we'll take questions for exactly 5 minutes. We'll try to end on at 11:45. But as a preview, let me tell you that tomorrow we're going to dive headfirst into Vedanta philosophy and look at particularly this concept of achintya bheda bheda. How is it similar to and different from the ideas of Sripad Ramanujacharya and Shankaracharya? How Jiva Goswami establishes this concept using in the Sandarbhas, particularly Paramatma Sandarbha. So if you're looking for a correlation with the Sandarbhas, what we discussed in the beginning of today's class was Tattva Sandarbha, and I was referencing that quite explicitly when we were doing it. Then everything we talked about from the concept of Bhagavan onward into this Srimad Bhagavatam analysis, this is mostly the Bhagavat Sandarbha, going a little bit into Paramatma Sandarbha, and most of what we're going to talk about next time is going to be, as in tomorrow morning, is going to be Paramatma Sandarbha primarily, where he's discussing this idea of Achintya Bheda Bheda, the Lord's relationship to his energies, to us, and to the material world. Okay, so questions now, just till 11:45.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
I have one question, very small question. We see, if you can explain a bit more about Jiva Goswami's eternal position and his pastime in Goloka, as well as compared to what his pastimes were there on this material planet. And there is some correlation behind it. That will be really wonderful.
Yeah. It's a good question. I know he's one of the Manjaris, but I don't remember which Manjari he is, unfortunately. And I definitely don't know what that Manjari service is for Radha and Krishna. So I don't know the answer to your question. I'm sorry. But it's certainly something that could be researched. I mean, it's we know his eternal spiritual identity, as in the Acharyas tell us. Yes.
So, Prabhuji, you were telling, the word aham is only Krishna can use and we cannot use. So, many people use this word namaha. Namaha. What does that mean, namaha?
Yeah, the word namaha means obeisance. I offer obeisance. I mean, there's other kinds of subtle or esoteric meaning that people give to it, like it's not about me, na, ma.
Yeah.
So like that, other meanings are given, but those are more like esoteric meanings. Means in terms of the straightforward grammar, namaha is the common referent for bowing down or offering respects or obeisances. I mean, grammatically speaking, then the object of namaha goes into the dative case. So, Krishnaya namaha, Devaya namaha. So, God always goes into the dative case, and then namaha is used to address him from there.
But why it is said not me? Krishnaya namaha, not me.
It means it's not about me, it's about Krishna.
Oh, okay.
I offer my obeisances to him. Right? But grammatically speaking, it's very straightforward, just obeisances. Yes.
Basic question regarding the definition of Bhagavan. So we see from Srimad Bhagavatam, Vyasa says Krishna Swayam Bhagavan, right? And from the definition of Bhagavan, one interesting point that was mentioned was it's about Lakshmi being on the left side. And Lakshmi, as we understand, is the eternal consort of Lord Narayana. And Narayana, we say, is a manifestation of Krishna. So to me, the definition kind of Bhagavan that you showed denotes more of Lord Narayana and than Krishna. So could you explain more on that?
So actually I was answering this similar question here when Prabhuji was asking. If it's referring to Lord Narayana or Vishnu, it's okay. Means the difference between Lord Vishnu and Krishna is a very fine matter. It's a fine, subtle distinction that Jiva Goswami is not interested in making until we come to the Krishna Sandarbha, where he starts to introduce the distinction between Krishna and his avatars and prakashas and all these manifestations. That happens much later. Right now, Jiva Goswami is happy if you simply accept the point that God is a person with qualities and with Shakti. And if you want to call him Vishnu, it's okay. Narayan, it's okay. Krishna is okay. Generically, it's clear that it's a Vaishnava Lord. So he never uses the word Shiva and Parvati. But that's not really his concern here. His concern is just basically to get us to accept philosophically that God is a person. Once that's done, then 50% of the battle is over. Right? Then it's just a matter of comparing different candidates for that position and seeing whose qualities shine out the best. And in Krishna Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami does a wonderful job of demonstrating that Krishna and Srimati Radharani point out to be the highest. Yes. Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Parasar Muni defines the 6 opulence of Bhagavan, already the definition, right? But Jiva Goswami, again, reinventing the Bhagavan here. Once you want to write more about it, or to achieve this goal, he elaborated.
Yes. So there are many definitions for the word Bhagavan, in fact. Besides the one that Parashara Muni gives of the 6 opulences, there are others that are given even in Tattva Sandarbha, or maybe it's Bhagavat, where he talks about Bhaga in a different way, and Bhagava, and each of the letters, Bha, Ga, and Va, are analyzed. So there are many definitions possible for the word Bhagavan. But Jiva Goswami, what he's giving here is a definition that matches with where he's trying to capture the essence of Mahaprabhu's philosophy. So he's basically investing the word Bhagavan with a technical definition. It's a technical term for him, so he can use it to prove this particular point. Right? So it's functioning here in a very specific manner, not in a generic sense. Yes. Okay, we're out of time. Let's stop here. Thank you all so much for your attention today.
I think we're all feeling it today. It's the confluence of many auspicious events. Appearance day of Srila Jiva Goswami, the appearance day of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Vamana Dwadashi, the appearance of the Tattva Sandarbha, and now we have a representative of the Tattva Sandarbha who apparently appeared in this world to illuminate the teachings of Jiva Goswami in a way that's consumable by the general mass of people. Not that you're the general mass of people, but, but for everyone in the world to carry on this tradition, which is the most important mission of all devotees, which is to carry down this knowledge. It's our family business, beginning with Brahma, being passed down so that everyone can take advantage and go back home, back to Godhead. So with the deepest gratitude, we thank His Grace, Radhika Ramana Prabhu, for coming here. I heard him mention something about a seminar teaching the Srimad Bhagavatam as the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. I noted that. We also noted carefully that Delta Airlines has a direct flight here. Hence, we can stop the project on the tunnel going from here to Utah. Which, if we started with spoons, we were going to tunnel all the way underneath. And we deeply, deeply appreciate you being here. What to speak of, Giriraja Maharaj has appeared, and all the devotees who have gathered online. And now, of course, as a final reminder, given all these this auspicious confluence of events, this book is a delivery system from the heart, from the pen of Srila Jiva Goswami, coming from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, from the spiritual world. This is the most spiritual and dear of objects in the world, as it is the Tadiya, and at the same time it is directly a manifestation of the Lord. Please take the Tattva Sandarbhas. We want to distribute these widely all over the world, as widely as possible, not in the hundreds, not in the thousands, but in the tens, hundreds of thousands, millions. Some spiritual traditions start with but one sermon or two with a few words on a page, a little sketchy philosophy, and it turns into a worldwide movement. We're starting from a base which is infinitely larger. And we're in the beginning stages of that. We want to get it out to society, as Prabhupada said, to inject this philosophy into the world. He said it's permanent. Once it goes in, it never goes out. It'll change the course of history. Please take these books. If you don't have one yourself, take one. Take a few for other people too and pass them on. Mail them to other people that you know who are interested in spiritual life, to your friends, to your families. We want to proliferate the Tattva Sandarbha and all the other books as much as possible. It's $25. If you want to call in from the internet, the number is 650-245
7018.
7018. Our operators are standing by to take your calls. And if anybody else wants one, today's a good day. We still have a couple of copies left. You can take them with you. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow at 11:30. Did you have a text come in?
That was a question coming up. What time does it start?
11:30 a.m. We're going to start here at 11:29 tomorrow. So be here, and we'll get the nectar from Radhika Ramana Prabhu. Thank you. One more round for Radhika, please. Hare Krishna. Vancha kalpatarubhascha kripasnabhevacha patitanam papadibhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namah. Go pray.
There is a light snacks outside, the fruits and the mango lassi, so please enjoy. Thank you.